Cars have got bigger, faster, safer, gone to more places, entered more races and worn more faces as the years have rolled by. Art has become science as engineers design cleaner, greener, smoother and quieter machines. Inventors invented, engineers engineered, and the motorcar became a fixture of a fast-moving world. Roads have joined cities, and cities have sprung up along roads. Mankind as servants of the machine, or machines the servants of mankind. Either way, we seem to be building new cars all the time. Precision movements, perfect harmony, running like a well-oiled machine. The lure of sunshine and the open road can't be resisted when there's power to be unleashed. Bends to be taken, hills to be climbed, deserts explored, and rivers crossed just because they're there. Old warriors of battles long since won or lost are revered, harking back to a time when mighty gladiators fought the road, the clock, and each other. For now, a new generation of heroes in fantastical machines will do the same, harnessing today's screaming demons of speed and measuring their victories and defeats in fractions of a blink. They will go to faraway places and hold their races just as their fathers and grandfathers have done before them. And winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, even if no one's watching. And on the way home, under the skin, the machine's still with us, still there, still keeping us safe. In this program, we explore the road less travelled and the vehicles that travel it. In the earliest days, roads were places that horses hauled carts. But as more and more cars came along, so did road construction gangs, roadworks, road closures, and chaos on the roads. From hard-packed earth to hand-laid wooden blocks, cobblestones to concrete, and eventually poured and rolled hot mix, a byproduct of making petrol, roads became more durable. Vehicle makers rose to the challenge and soon realized that driving all the wheels was the most efficient way of moving their machines. The first four-wheel drive was made in Amsterdam in 1903. But some car drivers wanted to go further than the roads permitted, and in weather that would defeat most cars. So owners had their vehicles fitted with skis and moving link tracks like chains that became common on military and earth-moving machines. One of the first four-wheel drive systems was designed for a steam engine before cars were even invented, but the robust all-wheel drive truck built by Marmon Harrington was quickly adapted to military use. Explorers and commercial interests saw improved all-terrain vehicles as the way to conquer vast and inhospitable areas like the Sahara Desert. Caravans of camels would soon be sharing the desert with convoys of wheeled vehicles, though the camels would sometimes be needed to free vehicles trapped by the shifting sands. If necessity is the mother of invention, then warfare is its father. All it takes for technology to make huge leaps is a war, and the world of automobiles is no different. The Second World War spawned what is now known as the Jeep. Although no one's really certain what the name came from an abbreviation of general purpose to an internal Ford naming system, in early 1941, Willys proved the vehicle's off-road capability by having it driven up the steps of the United States Capitol by a test driver who heard soldiers calling it a Jeep. Small, rugged, cheap, and seemingly indestructible, it prompted dozens of imitators and variations from just about every manufacturer. Even once the war was over, vehicle development continued, with trucks being made to carry more load over rougher ground and at higher speeds. The British Army even experimented with a gas turbine-powered armoured vehicle, and weren't shy about demonstrating what their fighting machines could do. So too the Americans, keen to find out just how far these rugged all-terrain runabouts could be pushed. And in the complete absence of any kind of driver protection or safety equipment. And after the war, when there were lots of surplus Jeeps left at the end of hostilities, keen drivers did what comes naturally. They raced them. This is probably the only time in motorsport where a dog is allowed to be carried as a passenger, and where you're encouraged to soak your rivals. Even with humans aboard, the result is the same. As drivers tackle tough terrain in their rugged little ex-army surplus vehicles. "50 years on, and the original Jeep has grown up and become more civilized for a civilian role, but the off-road capability and the dirty ambitions are still there." What is now known as the Jeep Wrangler takes its passengers even further off the beaten track, in more comfort and with greater safety levels. It's become the great freedom machine of the get-away-from-it-all crowd, able to drive to work in the city Monday to Friday and head off into the wilderness at any time. With a clip-on hard roof or a canvas top that can be peeled off to let the sunshine in, and with stout rollover bars, the Jeep has evolved with the times. Over the years, Jeep have built more passenger-friendly cars too, still with their tough go-anywhere underpinnings, but with more weather protection and more convenience. One of the more recent models, but one with a proud history, is the Cherokee. Needless to say, some owners have sought more and more performance, so the factory's response was to fit a high-performance 6-litre V8 engine and lots of bling inside and out to create the ultimate Jeep. And SRT stands for Street, Road, Track, a high-performance division of Chrysler, who own the Jeep name. For those that don't need quite that much performance, there's always the standard Cherokee that combines most of the comfort and convenience of a modern car with the go-almost-anywhere capabilities of all-wheel drive. Not surprisingly, all manner of imitations, copies and clones have come and gone over the years, and the bustling Asian continent has produced a fair few of them. A series of rallies in India attract hundreds of competitors every year, who tackle a route usually made tougher by sudden monsoon rains or choking dust in cars which aren't exactly state-of-the-art racing machines.
The rally has been really fun. The route was through one of the most diverse and difficult terrains. There was slush and mud, forests, routes cutting through rivers and rain-drenched countryside.
Over in England, and having seen how useful the Jeep was in wartime, the Rover Car Company designed and built the first Land Rover in a little over 9 months in 1948. The first Land Rover prototype was built on a Jeep chassis as a farm vehicle. The metal's resistance to corrosion gave the vehicle a reputation for longevity in the toughest conditions. Once production started and the word got out, Land Rovers started being used for all sorts of applications and being exported to dozens of countries. At one stage, it was estimated that 3/4 of all Land Rovers ever built were sold outside Britain. Although it took 28 years to build 1 million Land Rovers, they were built outside Britain too, at factories in Spain, Iran, Turkey and Brazil. The 4 millionth vehicle was built in 2007. Like tractors, some Land Rovers had extra power takeoffs to drive implements like this pneumatic chainsaw or a generator. The rear-facing PTOs were available as options until 1985 and can still be ordered as a special fitment. The British Army used Land Rovers in many guises for decades, and the elite Special Air Service had unique, secret modifications carried out on their vehicles. Like Jeep owners, Land Rover owners use their vehicles for recreation. Though the British have a different idea of motorsport. And if there's even less grip to be had than on a muddy English hillside, there were conversions to fit Caterpillar tracks that gave the vehicle more ground clearance and a much bigger footprint, useful on really soft ground like mud and snow. Another variation of the long-suffering Land Rover was called the road railer. An extra set of wheels could be dropped hydraulically onto standard railway tracks, making the vehicle into a track inspection tool, or a quick way to complete a journey where there's a rail line but no road, such as in dense jungle or some national parks. These vehicles demonstrated quick acceleration compared to small locomotives and were used for lightweight shunting in rail yards. Intended to move personnel and small equipment, the main problem was that the Land Rover was often too small to trip train detection safety circuitry. The idea hasn't gone away though, and there are still a few late-model Land Rovers equipped for a life on the rails. In 1962, the Vickers-Armstrong Company built the Hover Rover. Vickers had started hovercraft development in 1961, and the Hover Rover was developed beside their first big hovercrafts. Technically a cushion craft, the Hover Rover was developed to minimize ground pressure, allowing the vehicle to cross sensitive ground such as freshly sown fields that needed to be sprayed with fertilizer or insect repellent. The main problem was that it required two engines, vastly reducing the vehicle's carrying capacity. Although the hover cushion supported much of this extra weight, it was still a problem for use on the road when the skirt was raised up. The Hover Rover was never developed beyond a few working prototypes, although for a few years Vickers used it as a promotional device for their larger hovercrafts. But despite its wide appeal, tough and rugged reputation and dozens of applications, Land Rover fell on tough times, along with the rest of the British car industry. Ownership of the iconic name passed from pillar to post, and in 1994, Land Rover was taken over by German car maker BMW. 6 years later, having spent millions to introduce new models, new technology and improve quality, the Germans admitted defeat and sold the landmark company to Ford for €3 billion. In 2002, a British car magazine reliability survey ranked a Land Rover 6th from the bottom of 100 vehicles, and the influential J.D. Power's Customer Satisfaction and Reliability Survey consistently rated Land Rovers at the bottom or near the bottom through the first decade of the new century. So it came as no big surprise when Ford sold Land Rover, and the prestigious Jaguar brand with it, to Tata Motors of India in 2008. Besides the familiar, boxy Defender range, other, more city-friendly and socially acceptable Land Rover models were introduced, such as the prestigious, powerful and luxurious Range Rover. First seen in 1970, the Range Rover, popular with well-heeled British celebrities, is often seen as the quiet achiever of the range. Despite looking like a big and ungainly station wagon, it combines the traditional Land Rover off-road capability with a lot of the road manners it inherited from BMW and, more recently, its Jaguar Super Saloon stablemates. Inside, it's like a stately English home, or one of those exclusive London gentlemen's clubs. The pale leather furniture and subtle wood trim look, feel, and even smell expensive, and they are. Modernity comes in the form of TV screens in the headrests, electronically adjustable four-wheel drive, and a reversing camera, but the versatility's still the same. The LR4, as it's known in some markets, or the Discovery elsewhere, offers slightly less space, less luxury, and a lower purchase price, but no compromise on capability. It was introduced in 1989, and early Discoveries were widely criticised for glaring quality control failings. But the company's designers, under both BMW and Ford's stewardship, worked hard at designing out the opportunities for problems to appear on the production line. At the same time, they've kept Land Rover's hard-won reputation as a world-class off-road machine. A still smaller Landy, the Freelander, was first seen in 1997 and introduced to America as the LR2. This was seen as the young person's Land Rover, cheaper, easier to drive, more city-friendly, but still imbued with a solid dose of Land Rover DNA. All the models have evolved over the years, gaining more performance and safety features, more electronic driver aids, and more environmentally friendly engines. They've certainly come a long way from the rudimentary agricultural machines made from war surplus sheet metal in 1948. Just as the Jeep was born out of a vehicle originally developed for the military, so too has the vehicle now known as the Hummer evolved from a military specification truck. Never an attractive vehicle, the original Humvee, or High Mobility Multi-Purpose Wheeled Vehicle, has 16 inches of ground clearance. There are at least 17 variants of the Humvee in service with the United States Armed Forces. They serve as cargo and troop carriers, automatic weapons platforms, ambulances, missile carriers, and they tow howitzers. However, their large size has made them unpopular with troops in areas with narrow roads and mountain passes. The story goes that action hero actor, former Mr. Universe bodybuilder and Governor of California Arnold Schwarzenegger saw a Humvee and decided he wanted one for use on the road. And so was born the Hummer, a slightly more civilized version of the military workhorse. The big, wide, heavy, thirsty, cramped, but immensely capable H1 off-roader sold surprisingly well in America, but in small numbers elsewhere. It was just too big, too heavy, too ponderous, too consumptive, and too brash for most markets. And peaking at over $150,000 for the premier model, it was too expensive, even for America. And after 14 years, production ceased in 2006. The later introduction of a smaller, more civilized H2 saw sales numbers climb, peaking at 34,500 in 2003, before dropping away to just 6,000 in 2008. when a basic model cost over $53,000. The smaller Still H3, built on the underpinnings of a conventional American market SUV in South Africa and Louisiana, failed to provide the big sales numbers at home in America, where it was seen as a poor man's Hummer and too small, and in the rest of the world, where it was regarded as too big. During its enforced bankruptcy, General Motors were obliged to close or sell a number of iconic brands, and Hummer was one of them. It was sold to a large Chinese heavy machinery manufacturer. Away from the world of big, heavy trucks and military-derived vehicles, a very special breed of racing driver was using a very special breed of racing car to get out into the countryside. The almost uniquely European sport of rallying sees cars and their two-person teams racing against the clock across closed public roads, and the public flock to obscure corners, bridges, waterholes or jumps to see these masters of the art of car control at work. The cars they drive vary immensely, from barely modified, humble family runabouts to heavily modified, fire-breathing monsters or hand-built one-off prototypes, lovingly assembled by factory-backed teams with the sole intention of winning world championships. Almost every manufacturer has used rally competition to generate publicity, for they used to say that what wins on Sunday sells on Monday. This is no longer true, but the fast, tough and challenging nature of rallies does demonstrate a car's strength and durability. Driving rally cars fast requires special techniques. For a start, unlike racing on a circuit where the same corners are repeated, on a rally, each section or special stage is driven only once or twice, and even then, it's often in the reverse direction. The driver has a co-driver or navigator who has a series of notes which are read aloud to the driver, who must decipher the instructions as well as drive the car on the very brink of disaster. The instructions contain information about the next corner, which way it goes, how fast it can be taken, what happens next. It's a symbiotic relationship. Each relies upon the other. Each one trusts the other, quite literally, with their lives. Undoubtedly one of the world's favourite rally cars, the Mitsubishi Lancer has been raced by homegrown hero privateers and more professional rally teams for years. Working within very strict rules, the major teams spend hours and millions to build a car capable of winning. Then they employ the very best technicians and drivers to bring the car home at events all over the world. Finnish driver Tommi Mäkinen was 4 times World Rally Champion consecutively between 1996 and 1999, driving for Mitsubishi. Turbocharged, high-performance and all-wheel drive cars are capable of insanely high speeds in the hands of drivers who seem to have a superhuman grip on the laws of physics. Just as successful, and the Lancer's bitter rival, has been Subaru's Impreza WRX. Scotsman Colin McRae in 1995, Englishman Richard Burns in 2001, and Norwegian Petter Solberg in 2003 all won the World Rally Championship Drivers' title with the World Rally Impreza. Of the three, only Solberg is still alive. McRae died in a helicopter crash just a few months after he retired, aged 39, while Burns died of a brain tumour 4 years to the day after he won his World Championship, and he was just 34. Like the Mitsubishi, the Subaru is a hugely powerful car, despite having only a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. Its rally successes have given the much less powerful road car almost cult status. Multiple world motorcycle champion Valentino Rossi lists rallying as one of his favourite sports. And despite several impressive test sessions in a Ferrari Formula One car, the charismatic Italian bike racer chose to make his four-wheel debut in a rally car. Despite getting a fair bit of practice on a simulated course at home in Italy, watched by his impressively large and loyal band of dedicated fans, and with input from rally greats like Colin McRae, Valentino's first event, the notoriously difficult, cold, wet Rally of Wales, saw him slither off the track into a ditch and out of the event. German carmaker Audi produced a four-wheel drive system called Quattro, and they tested it by racing the intimidating Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, also known as the Race to the Clouds. The event, which began in 1916, is an annual automobile and motorcycle hill climb to the summit of Pikes Peak in Colorado. The track covers 20 kilometers and 156 turns, climbing over 1,400 meters from the start on both gravel and paved sections of road. The record for the ascent is just over 10 minutes. The boxy little Audi S1 went on to race with distinction in sports car events, endurance events and rallies around the world, and gave rise to a whole generation of racers, which also included multiple wins in the German touring car class and eventually the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The worth of all-wheel drive in regular cars, away from the racetracks and rally special stages, is shown by improved handling, steering and braking, and with much higher levels of safety, especially in wet weather, snow or emergency situations. But for those who don't need to get to the very ends of the earth, but do need to get across town or to the shops, there's a new breed of all-wheel drive. Cars made by the biggest and the best factories on the planet, cars built with safety, comfort and convenience foremost on the design brief, but with just a little bit extra too. These are the so-called soft-roaders, cars which might not climb every mountain, but they'll certainly get you to the base camp. Drivers of real 4x4s may look down on them and sneer, but the truth is, soft-roaders sell. They sell in the millions, all over the world, because inside every city slicker, there's a secret person yearning for the great outdoors. Perhaps not surprisingly, Audi have given us an all-roads capable model for years, fitted with variations of their clever Quattro system. It used to be called the All-Road, But now there's the Q7 and the smaller Q5. Luxury cars with every modern safety feature. Smooth, quiet and relaxing, no matter where you drive. In contrast, the BMW X1 is a much smaller soft-roader, built to complement the smallest four-wheeled BMWs now available. Interestingly, it doesn't much look like an all-wheel drive, much less a desert-taming 4x4, as some people feel that 4x4s don't belong in city streets. And to look at the X1, who would know? Most of the time it looks, drives, feels, rides, starts, steers and stops like a regular car. But when you want to reach that distant fishing spot or need to cross a pasture to feed the horse, the versatility of the littlest Beamer shines through. %, that's one car in 5, sold by BMW are their X models, meaning they are X3 and X5 station wagons, plus the swoopy but very much more expensive X6 four-door coupe. Volvo's XC60 has that same station wagon on stilts look and gets away with it because Volvo has a huge reputation for being safe, solid, reliable, sturdy and boring. In fact, it's anything but boring. Because both Volvo and Land Rover were owned by Ford during its design phase, the mid-size station wagon Volvo shares many parts with the smallest Land Rover, the Freelander. Happily, the Volvo escaped the quality control gremlins that plagued Land Rover and boasts very high customer satisfaction levels. But quality cars packed with clever ideas don't only come from Europe. Korean car maker Kia offers its Sorento as a first step into 4x4 ownership. It looks a bit more like the real thing and comes with big and quite powerful V6 engines. Since its introduction in 2003, Kia have steadily refined the Sorento, and it now boasts a 5-star safety rating, the highest available for all passengers in the event of a crash. Boasting a big 80-litre fuel tank and offering fair refinement and more off-road capability than most owners will ever need, the Koreans have come a long way in a hurry, now building affordable and capable cars, just as the Japanese did before them. During the Second World War, an Australian named Ben Carlin saw an amphibious Jeep and decided it should, theoretically, be possible to drive and sail around the world in just the one vehicle. After the war, he ended up in America, got married, and found a suitable amphibious vehicle. The couple added a more boat-like prow, a cabin, and a bigger fuel tank to make it half safe, and set off across the Atlantic in 1950, eventually reaching Morocco. After several years in England to repair the vessel and write a first book, the couple sailed across to France in 1955 and then drove through Europe, Iraq, Persia, Pakistan and India. They shipped the Jeep from Calcutta to Perth so they could tour Australia, including a visit to Guildford Grammar, Ben's old school. The Jeep was then returned to Calcutta so that it could resume the circumnavigation under its own power. Ben sailed to Burma and drove overland to Thailand, Cambodia and Vietnam, then sailed to Japan via Hong Kong and Taiwan. Leaving Japan, he set out on the long last ocean leg to Alaska. On May the 13th, 1958, the Jeep finally drove into Montreal, where the project had started. It had covered 9,600 nautical miles by water and 39,000 miles overland, by Carlin's reckoning. The book of the second half of the trip was not published until 1989, 8 years after Carlin's death. Halfsafe is now at Guildford Grammar School and has been beautifully restored and is on show in a special glass-walled garage. It's a driving school with a difference. It's in Kandahar, southern Afghanistan, where pupils are learning how to drive an armoured Humvee. Soldiers from the Afghan National Army and international forces are taking turns around the track.
They have water obstacles, they have some rough terrain, they have the rocks and very narrow passages, and then on the advanced piece of the course they have some angles that will roll them to the right and left, and some steeper hills that they will go up and down.
These Humvees, donated by the US, are new to the Afghan Army. The soldiers have to undertake a 3-week course before they head out on the road.
When we start our lessons, the first step is to introduce the soldiers to the vehicle, then to the driving, the different switches in the vehicle, the radio and the gears.
For some of these students, it's not just their first time driving a Humvee, it's their first time behind the wheel.
They haven't driven anything before. The clutch, operating something with a clutch, it always lurches, and it's comical sometimes. With the Humvee, it's because it's so wide. They'll drive through a gate or something and inevitably scrape off the other side, you know, because it's so wide. We can have some fun out here, but hopefully without tearing up too many vehicles.
What is now regarded as the world's toughest race started out as a winter holiday jaunt for a group of friends. Frenchman Thierry Sabine mooted a run from Paris to Dakar, the capital of Senegal in West Africa. This ultimate get-away-from-it-all trip quickly became a race, with Sabine as organizer and promoter. But it was no fun-in-the-sun, comfortable luxury coach tour. The event runs over 2 weeks and covers thousands of kilometers, and it's open to cars, buggies, bikes, trucks, and quad bikes. As the streets of Paris and also regional France became unable to host an event of this size, the start venue moved around and was more recently in Spain or Portugal. A few times the end wasn't in Dakar either. Once it went all the way to Cape Town, another time to Egypt. The event is so tough that it's claimed dozens of lives. Drivers, riders, navigators, spectating locals, mostly in crashes, but sometimes as victims of gun-toting bandits. Sabine himself was killed, along with 4 others, in a helicopter crash on the event in 1986. Eventually, threats of lawlessness and steadily increasing political and civil unrest in the region forced the cancellation of the event in 2008. For 2009, the entire event was successfully relocated from North Africa to South America and looks likely to stay there. So, even though it now goes nowhere near Dakar, it's still called the Dakar Rally, and it's still a magnet for motorsport's hardest, toughest competitors. Female racer Jutta Kleinschmidt first rode the Dakar Rally on her motorbike, merely as a spectator. Then the German blonde got a ride as a competitor on a BMW bike, and eventually switched to cars, first in a Mitsubishi, where she became the very first woman to win the event, and later in a Volkswagen. She and her teammates, which have included former World Rally champion Carlos Sainz, have steadily developed their Volkswagen Touareg racer into a serious contender for victory, even if it looks nothing like the road-going vehicle that customers can buy in dealers' showrooms. Several successful bike racers have switched to cars after a few years as the number of riders killed in the event steadily rose. Probably the most successful is Stefan Petterhansel, who won the event 6 times riding a Yamaha in the 1990s and then made the switch to driving for Mitsubishi, winning the Dakar 3 more times as a driver. For racers of this kind of event, the rougher, the hotter, the longer and the more remote, the better. They really do want to get far from the maddening crowd.